about where you position yourself, okay? Because if you have a patient that has a big, wide personal bubble and you get in that bubble, it's going to make them extremely uncomfortable and they're not going to want to tell you or share any of their healthcare information. Okay, if you look over on page 119, it talks a little bit about rewards of assertive communication. So there in a box, figure 6-1, it lists assertive communication, and here are some rewards to it. Here's what helps you, okay? So it reduces the anxiety and stress, improves your self-esteem, provides respect for your ideas and opinions, motivates others to clearly state their ideas and opinions. If you are an assertive speaker and you have someone that is extremely passive, it might give them enough gumption to be like, hey, you know what? I have an idea and I want to express it. Provides a sense of control. Provides the ability to say no when you mean no without feeling guilty. Protects you from being taken advantage of by others. Minimizes alienating others, and demonstrates respect for the feelings of others. I don't know about you all, but that sounds like a lot of good rewards there for having assertive communication styles. All right, we're going to skip a couple of pages and we're going to flip to page 123. 123. All right, and we're going to talk this chapter a little bit about conversation skills. All right, so we learned that in the last section that we have different types of communication styles. We got passive, aggressive, and then if you're a great combo of those two, that's the assertive communication style. We're going to talk about conversations, which we have all the time with our patients and coworkers, okay? How do we find out information from our patients? Well, by conversations that we have with them. So, at the top of page 123, we're going to talk a little bit about conversation. Conversation is the two-way spoken exchange of thoughts, opinions, and feelings. A good conversationalist is a joy to be around. People who speak effortlessly and effectively with others are generally well-liked, influential, and successful. Sounds like a good thing to me. Improving your conversation skills can enhance your leadership skills, reduce your anxiety when talking in workplace meetings or social settings, boost your confidence, and lead to improved interpersonal relationships. This section will help you develop skills that engage others in the conversation and keep it moving. Okay, so if you look down at the bottom of page 123, it talks a little bit about begin the conversation, okay? So the very first sentence, and I hear this a lot from students, is the biggest fear in America is said to be speaking in public. The second biggest fear is starting a conversation with a stranger. That is so true on so many levels, okay? Why do we not like public speaking? Well, it's very intimidating, right? Because all eyes are on you. Everybody is listening to your words. And then the second one, starting a conversation with a stranger. The reason why we don't like that one is because of rejection, right? What if we started up a conversation with a perfect stranger and they didn't want to talk to us, or they didn't want to have anything to do with us? It's not really a good self-esteem booster, is it? That's why a lot of Americans don't like to do these two things. However, in healthcare, these are the most important things. Okay, if you look, it says, however, you can overcome such fears as you learn the strategies described here, using small talk and icebreakers as conversation openers, avoiding unpleasant statements or questions, remembering the listener's name, and working to hold the listener's attention. So these are all good tactics you can use to help with your conversation skills. All right, if you turn to page 124, we're going to talk a little bit about those things. The first one is small talk. Small talk is light, informal conversation that has no agenda. It is simply a way to acknowledge the person's presence and create a comfortable environment. Polite greetings such as good evening or hello, how are you, are good for starters. Because people generally enjoy talking about themselves, getting people to talk about themselves can be a good conversation starter. I know this to be true in healthcare. Not only with your coworkers, if you are just going around the building and you say, hi, how do you think that might make that coworker feel? It might make them feel like maybe they were having a bad day. Maybe they were just in a bad mood. And because you said hello, kind of brightened them up a little bit. Well, that person cares. Hello, back. Okay. With patients, when I room a patient, first thing I say to them after saying their name is, hi, how are you? Okay. Not only is it a good way to just start off the conversation, but also it makes the patient feel validated and it's polite, right? It has them like, oh, this person cares about how I'm doing, straight out the gate. Okay. The next thing it mentions is, and it's in big bold letters, is icebreakers. And no, I'm not talking about the gum, okay? And what is an icebreaker? Well, icebreakers are topics used to lessen tension or awkwardness at the beginning of a conversation. I use icebreakers a lot with rooming my patients. My main ones that I use are, if I know it's an older generation, I might talk about the weather. Weather's a good one. I might ask them about, oh, did you see the new office chairs in the waiting room? Could you believe it's raining outside? Is it hot out? I haven't been outside in a while. It's just generalized questions. I never ever though bring up politics or religion. Okay, those are not good icebreakers. Okay, but if you just keep it to generalizations such as the weather, maybe the drive, maybe they're doing construction out on the road. Did you have to drive through that construction? Oh, but it's just a nice little icebreaker because once you get the conversation rolling, most of the time these patients, they just want to talk, that's why they're there, right? And if you deem that you care, not just about why they're there and their health, but also about their general well-being, they're going to really open up to you and provide you with the information that you require for your office notes. Okay? If you look at the very bottom of page 124, it talks about keeping it positive. Okay, so people enjoy talking with someone who is upbeat and positive and tend to avoid individuals who make a habit of speaking negatively. Negativity spreads. It's like a disease. Okay. I tell my students this all the time, and this is just a real world life situation that I was told by a past instructor, and I've always just lived by it. So I don't care if you're having a bad day, if your significant other broke up with you, you lost a $20 bill, your child kept you up all night long, that's not the patient's problem, okay? The patient had no control over that, all right? So I understand that you might have had a bad day, but it's your job as a medical assistant to make that patient feel comfortable and caring about their health care. And they can't exactly do that when you're being a negative Nelly, okay? So I know it might be hard, but we have to put on that persona and maintain our positivity. Why? Because negativity is infectious. And so if you are negative, that in turn is going to make your patient negative. And if anybody has ever dealt with a negative patient, it's not good, okay? They're not looking into the positive of anything. Everything is just horrible. Nothing was done right. They can't do anything, okay? And that's not our purpose. Our purpose is to help our patients and to make them positive about their health, Okay? Avoid negative or unpleasant statements or questions like these examples when trying to start a conversation. Don't you hate Monday mornings? It is so hard to get going. Did you hear that the Dallas plant is closing? Hundreds of people are going to be out of work. I suppose we are next. Okay. Another thing I want to point out is that if you are a medical assistant and you're unhappy with your position, that don't complain about your job, or don't complain about having to work over lunch or something like that, because like I said, once again, that's not the patient's problem, and we want to maintain positivity. Positivity. Okay? If you look on page 125, it talks a little bit about remembering names. Okay? I don't know about you, but I've personally been, it's been in the doctor's office. Heck, even when I went through Starbucks one time, my name is Bethany, and they wrote on my Starbucks cup, Batlany. So if anyone has ever been called by the wrong name, you know that it's kind of like disheartening, and you can either shrug it off, but it really does bother you, right? Because it makes you think, well, they obviously don't care to know my name, okay? So the ability to remember people's names is an important social skill. Remembering a person's name not only creates instant familiarity and connection to the other person, it subtly pays an effective compliment. All right? Because if you remember your patient's name or say it correctly, that patient is going to be like, man, they really took the effort to know me and to know my name. Okay? So a sample conversation heard at the Leland Cosmetics Company picnic follows. Allison: hello, I'm Allison Jensen. I live in your neighborhood. Kaylee: hi Allison, I'm Kaylee Riley. Where do you live? Allison: could you repeat your name again, please? Kaylee, spelled Kailee, Riley. Allison says, thanks, Kaylee. That's a lovely name. I live at the corner of Imperial Drive and Hamilton Avenue. That's just a block north of where I live. Small world, isn't it? We live in the same neighborhood and work for the same company. What do you enjoy most about working at Leland Cosmetics? So, like I was saying, no one likes to be called by the wrong name or have their name mispronounced. So, when I'm working in the real world at a clinic, I might look at a patient's name, and sometimes you just look at a patient's name and you're like, I think it's pronounced this way. And then inevitably you call them and they'll tell you, hey, that's not my name. Or they won't say anything. If I'm questioning on how to pronounce someone's name, I will say it how I think it will be pronounced, but then I immediately follow that up with, did I pronounce that correctly? I'm so sorry if I didn't. Okay, I want to apologize to that patient because I don't want them to think that I just didn't care and I was just going to mispronounce their name no matter what. Okay, state your name when you meet someone. So it's really important in healthcare. We always are big about name tags. As you can see, as an instructor, I have scrubs and it has, well, I typically go by Bethany, but this one says Beth, but it has my name somewhere on the scrub. The reason for that is because healthcare, it's very important to know your provider's name, right? Because they took care of that patient, and that patient might want to see you again, or maybe they're going to call later on and they're going to want to specifically talk to the person that they talked to, okay? So it is imperative, not only for the patient's care, but also just for good communication skills. You need to introduce yourself. You need to tell them your name. Okay, don't be shy about it. You just need to tell them your name. I'm not saying you have to give them your entire personal history, like your middle name and your last name and your address and social security number, but at least just greet it and say, hi, I'm Bethany. I'm your medical assistant today. Can you come on back? I'm going to take you to the exam room. Okay, notice how pleasant that sounded. And I was also providing them with all the valid information. All right, if you turn to page 126, it talks about keeping the conversation moving, okay? Now, I'm not saying that we need to have an hour-long conversation with our patients. However, if you started off with a conversation starter or you went with an icebreaker, but you're still not getting anywhere, you really need to figure out how to keep the conversation going, right? So, okay, you initiated the conversation. How do you keep the conversation going? This can be done more easily if you can keep an open mind, hold the interest of your listener, avoid total disagreement with others, say no in a positive way, and encourage feedback. So, barring exceptional circumstances, there are some topics that will stop a conversation in its tracks. So, if you offend your patients, telling off-color jokes, mentioning salaries, personal misfortune, religion, politics, I mean, these are just no-brainers. You shouldn't be mentioning these things anyway. But it's going to off-put the patient, and it's going to stop the conversation in the tracks. So you need to keep an open mind, all right? It says open-minded means having or showing receptiveness to new and different ideas and the opinions of others. We should be keeping open minds no matter what in healthcare, because we can't judge patients, right? That's not our job to judge patients. We have to believe everything that our patient tells us when we room them. So we have to keep an open mind at all times. Hold the listener's interest. The ability to listen is an important conversational skill. We have to listen all the time, right? Because we need to document what our patients told us in their medical record. How do we do that? By listening, right? Because if we're not listening, then we're not getting all the information that is medically necessary in the patient's chart. If you look over on page 127, it talks about avoid total disagreement. All right, so a conversation is not a win or lose event. It should be open exchange among the participants. If you strongly express an opposite viewpoint to the one being related, or if you contradict or interrupt the speaker, you are being rude. Okay, I have a very good example of this. When I work in clinics with the pandemic, I get asked a lot. When it first started, the pandemic first started, I was constantly asked about mask wearing. I had a lot of patients that did not want to wear their mask, and they were very disgruntled about it. And so they would blatantly ask me a question, as in like they were totally disagreeing with the mask. And I would have to, I have my own opinion. However, that's not my place to provide my opinion about that. So I would just reinforce the company protocol in regards to mask usage. But you will get that a lot in healthcare. But that's what you have to remember, is you have to avoid total disagreement, because that's not our place to provide judgment on others, right? Because we're there for our patient advocates. The next one is say no in a positive way. So if you just flat out tell a patient, no, I'm not doing that, that comes across as extremely rude, right? And if you were a patient, how do you think you would feel if the medical assistant told you that? I don't think I'd be too happy. All right, so we need to say no sometimes, because we can't say yes all the time. But sometimes we have to say no, but we have to put it in a positive spin, okay? Because like I said previously, negativity spreads like a disease, okay? So we have to make sure that this no that we're saying is positive, okay? So it is essential to learn and practice how to say no in a positive way and still get your message across. In some circumstances, you can say no by simply implying it. If a coworker asks you to answer his phone over the lunch hour, you might reply, I'm having lunch with my sister today at the same time your lunch hour is scheduled. So you didn't flat out say no, you can't do that. However, you put them in the situation that told him inadvertently, like, hey, I already have plans, I'm really sorry that I can't do that for you. All right, if you turn to page 128, we're going to talk about encourage feedback. All right, so how do you encourage feedback? Well, you encourage feedback when you ask for it directly and give reinforcement to the listener who responds to your question. Suppose you ask your coworker, Bethina, how she likes the new health insurance plan. Bethina responds, I think the new program is too expensive for workers with children. If you say, well, you're lucky you have insurance that will cover kids, Bethina will probably in the conversation. To encourage Bethina to continue the conversation, you might ask, I understand it is more expensive for employees with families. How have you considered expressing your views to management? See, so that was a good example of encouraging feedback. We weren't just shutting down the conversation. We were trying to encourage conversation. All right, the next topic, or the last topic, I should say, that we're going to discuss is different types of questions to ask. Okay, so a couple of different questions that we can ask our patients, and questions are key in finding out all sorts of information from our patients, is open, close. We have probing, and rhetorical. Okay, so in healthcare, open-ended questions are the big one, right? An open-ended question means that you're finding out the who, what, why, when, and where, and they cannot respond with a yes or no question. Okay, so if you ask the patient, are you experiencing abdominal pain? They're going to respond yes or no. But if you ask them the question, the open-ended question, can you tell me what kind of abdominal pain you're experiencing? They can't answer that with a yes or no, right? They have to describe something to you. So open-ended questions, especially for medical assistants when you're rooming and trying to find out the who, what, why, when, and where, open-ended questions are your friend, okay? Open questions typically elicit long answers and encourage others to participate in the conversation. They usually begin with the words what, why, or how. An open-ended question asks the receiver about his or her knowledge, feelings, thoughts, or opinions. Okay? If you look at the top of page 129, it talks about closed questions. Okay? And so closed questions are essentially the opposite of open, right? It's a yes or no question. There's no description. It's literally one-word answers. Okay? So closed questions require single word or very short answers and are used to test one's understanding of another person's comments. The next one is probing. Probing questions are used in seeking more detail to help clarify or verify what has just been said. And then the rhetorical questions aren't really questions at all because they don't require an answer. For example, wasn't that a great book? The purpose of a rhetorical question is to engage the listener, to draw the listener out. Using a rhetorical question is much better than telling your listener, this is a great book. Okay? Another example, don't you love the vivid colors in this design? The listener is likely to continue the conversation saying, I love the vivid colors in this design. All right. So that, my friends, is Chapter 6 in Communications. I hope you enjoyed our little lecture today, and I hope you have a fabulous day.